Hello everyone, welcome back to TouchTheFireTwice. I'm Joshua, and I'm here today to do an in-depth sniff comparison review of the 18-ounce HomeWorx by Slatkin & Co. Salted Caramel Cake Candle here. The traditional 18-ounce chrome lid, 4-wick, classic HomeWorx, this smells good, classic HomeWorx candle. Now this candle is interesting for, well, many reasons, but a little bit of history on this. This was actually part of the original candle launch of HomeWorx, brand launch of HomeWorx in summer of 2017 on QVC exclusively at the time, where Harry launched, I believe probably as the Today Special Value, 8 sets of candles, of which this was one of the 16 of that first launch. This was paired with Spiced Apple Crumb, another really, popular winner from HomeWorx. I didn't purchase this at the time. In fact, this is the first time I purchased Spice Caramel Cake. In fact, when Harry launched this with QVC, he did a segment from his townhome in New York, from his kitchen, because they said they built this fragrance based on a cake that he and his family make on a regular basis, a salted caramel cake that he actually added Grand Marnier to the caramel, whipped cream, and caramel sauce that goes over this sort of traditional vanilla cake. Salted caramel cake, I decided with the recent launch or drop on homeworx.shop, great sales, tons of scents obviously were released recently. You can see my haul first impressions video that I uploaded recently. And I figured, you know what, let me give this a shot. It was a good sale. There are the influencer codes out there. There's some rewards codes. Made a good price point for these great quality candles that we're used to from HomeWorx. I have burned it. This is a post-burn review. Got a solid burn on this. Like many of my recent HomeWorx candles, I don't know that it matters, but I'm still calling it out. A lot of little cracking right around the edge of the wax once it cools down post-burn. Doesn't seem to really affect the performance, but it is something as the wax kind of settles and contracts that I have continued to see in the burns. And that is a bit different than what I've seen in the past with HomeWorx. Let's get into the notes. I will talk through the notes, what I expect it to smell like, what I actually think it smells like, and then I will also talk through, I'll compare it to 1 HomeWorx caramel candle and 3 Bath & Body Works candles that were caramel based, one of which is post Slatkin era, so it was just a Bath & Body Works in-house blend, and then 2 are from the Slatkin & Co era at Bath & Body Works, and compare and contrast, because there's one of them or 2 of them that are very, very similar to this in a good way that was unexpected for me. What I was saying was, though, the original one likely said Grand Marnier sauce on it. Grand Marnier is a cognac and sort of bitter orange, though sweet, liqueur mixture that is often used in flavorings and flambés, also in some cocktails. You can do old fashions with it, or you can do a Manhattan. It's a Grand Marnier Manhattan. You can use it in place of Cointreau or triple sec when you are making a margarita. Really versatile, but it's got this nice cognac base to it, which is gonna give you, cognac is typically made from almost like wine or from grapes, but it is a liquor, it is not a wine, but it's going to be aged, severely aged in barrels, and it imparts this sort of dried fruit, raisin-like, oaky, warm kitchen spice mouthfeel and scents and flavors to it. And so when you're gonna throw that into a candle, you're expecting something really interesting from there. And that's what I get in this, is something very interesting. All that to say, this no longer lists Grand Marnier sauce on the bottom, but in the recipe that Harry posted with QVC, what I was saying, in his townhome in New York, he actually did make the cake and they posted the recipe on QVC's blog. It mentioned Grand Marnier in, both the caramel and the sort of whipped cream, they called it sauce, but really whipped cream filling in the layers. Interesting, right? So that said, salted caramel, black walnut, caramel swirl, and vanilla bean. All right, salted caramel and caramel swirl, same thing. Why are you duplicating it? Give me another note. Give me something else in here. Call out the cream, something, right? Black walnut. Now, black walnut is not your typical walnut. It's not just a nutty thing. It's something that is used oftentimes in fine fragrance, but it can be used, I don't know what the version was used in here. It can often be something that is spicy, warm, creates almost sort of like a kitchen spice or baking spice note beyond just your typical nutty walnut, but it can also be used green and be a sort of a bitterness or some other sort of spiciness that's added to home fragrance or fine fragrance. So not certain exactly what they're going for the black walnut here, but I wouldn't read that as expecting a typical nutty note. And then of course vanilla bean, assuming that is probably in the filling, in the whipped cream. They don't mention the cream in here at all. They could. Again, this I don't love. I don't think that's really descriptive. And when we're going sort of nose blind on most of these, as far as not getting to sniff them in a store for the most part, I would really love a more descriptive list of notes and scent story with this. That's my feedback for the HomeWorx team, if they would ever be watching. But sniffing it, it is so much more complex and in-depth than I thought it was gonna be. It is really, really good. So it is, you get a bit of the cake, not a lot. There's a little bit of that sort of the cakey in the background, but just a vanilla sort of yellow cake. But primarily you're getting the caramel and cream. Again, they don't call the cream out there. If this is supposed to be indicative of what you're smelling in the candle though, this is whipped cream, whipped cream, whipped cream. So plenty mixed in there with your caramel sauce. And it's really a soft, drippy caramel. It's not necessarily like a chewy caramel or a hard cracked caramel, like a burnt caramel. It is that really soft, runny, sweet, almost like kind of buttery caramel from, making the caramel from either butter or heavy cream, something stirred into your melted sugar with water. This is a really soft, and again, salted caramel. It is very, very creamy, very milky. I would say for me, it is more creamy caramel than cake, which is fine. But with that, I mean, there's enough of cake in the background, almost like sort of yes, like a yellow, traditional fine yellow cake, crumb cake. Now, the thing that is not listed anywhere in here, that in addition to the cream and the caramel, I'm getting very, very much in here, not knock you over the head, but significantly a key differentiator to this compared to some other just caramel cakes or caramel candles, is there's a beautiful baking spice in here that is like a soft Ceylon cinnamon. Don't think red hot cinnamon, don't think Christmas cinnamon. If you don't like that, doesn't matter. You could still like this because it's very different. It is a soft Ceylon cinnamon, like a Mexican cinnamon. That's not like, if you've ever seen the cinnamon sticks that are really hard, that's not what this is. This is the thin, fine bark that you can just crack in half. It crumbles up. It's a much softer, warm, almost vanilla-y cinnamon versus your intense, like Chinese or Vietnamese cinnamon that is very, very strong, your traditional, more spicy cinnamon. This is gonna be a soft, you could throw a ton in and it's not gonna have any sort of heat to it that some cinnamon can. Really soft, but just adds such a cozy warmth to it. Your Grand Marnier can do some of that cozy warmth as well, which is some of what you get from like berry trifle in there with some orange. I do not get the orange in this, however, that Grand Marnier typically would impart. It really is, again, creamy whipped cream, milk, whatever. A beautiful, soft caramel that is a runny, sweet, almost drinkable caramel, like caramel latte almost, which I'll get to in a second without the coffee, with a soft baking spice that just runs through it and adds an additional layer, which led me to a couple of things I wanted to compare in this. I will also say the burn in this, solid. I don't have footage right here. I didn't film it when I burned it and I wanted to get this review out, but it pulled out well. It did a solid throw. I like that this doesn't knock you over the head. There was some Slatkin & Co. caramel salty caramel back in the day, launched 2011, around the same time, shortly before the Boardwalk collection at Bath & Body Works. That sucker, you would light that. You would leave the house, your coat, your hair would smell like that. You'd come back in the next morning, your home would still smell like that candle. That's a little heavy. It was a little bit much. This doesn't do that, like some caramels can do. This doesn't do that, which is good. It has a good solid throw. Again, like a lot of recent HomeWorx candles, to be quite honest, it's probably like a 5-6. I wouldn't mind a 7-8, but I burned it one time. I'm not making full judgment on that. There's many factors and variables that go into the sort of projection, strength, sillage of a candle, of the throw it's gonna give you. But it's not on the lighter side, but it's also not a heavy hitter in my book right now. So to be determined. I'll update both probably on my Instagram as I do continue to burn this. Now, to compare it, to do my in-depth sniff comparison review, if you're not familiar with what I do at TouchTheFireTwice, I have those other 4 candles here. Let's first start comparing it to a HomeWorx launch. This is Ooey Gooey Salted Caramel. This was from a really beautiful collection that also had creamy, dreamy vanilla in it, which was the best, most authentic vanilla ice cream I've ever smelled in wax. It had a minty, I'm not gonna get the names right, but a mint chocolate chip. It had this, it had, I believe there was also like fantastic fudge in that. It was a confection collection, these pinstripes, the scalloped lids, colored metal, not plastic, lids. This was back when they were doing the 3 wicks, you can see here. This was from I wanna say early 2018, something like that. Really beautiful collection, and most of those have not come back, I don't believe. Notes on this one: salted caramel, maple syrup honeyed nuts, warm butterscotch, buttered toffee, and dark brown sugar. A lot going on there, and they're just calling out different types of caramel and sweets thrown together. This one, I have not burned it, quite, honestly, transparently. So I don't know what all would come out in burning. It is, to me, a complex but straightforward caramel, which are the types that I'm not the biggest fan of. I love this because it's got a little bit of spice in the background. It's got some complexities. It's got the creaminess. It's got a little bit of cakiness, more so gourmand than true cakiness, but really nice. This one, while nice, is more, you've got the caramel, maybe a little bit of nuttiness, but variations of caramel. Really nice, but not my typical preference of caramel. Then just might as well look at the old Slatkin & Co. Salted Caramel. This is not the original packaging from when it first launched. This one was poured in mid-2012 for, I want to say, the 2012 fall collection. And this one was farm fresh sweet cream, salted caramel, and warm vanilla. This was, I believe, the second time that it came out after it had the salty caramel. It was like the one that knocked you over the head. Hard to get, let's be real, this one is 10 years old now. It hasn't been burned. It's a 4-ouncer. Even getting a good rub on there, I'm not getting a ton of fragrance coming out. Although I do believe, because no oils have come to the surface, it's been in a cool, average humidity room for the 10 years. I think it would probably burn just fine if I did burn it. It's a straightforward, creamy caramel. Not entirely different. I'd say these two are more similar than any of the others I'm going to talk through here, because they are a traditional straightforward caramel. Then we go to two more that we're getting closer. First up, this is Caramel Brûlée Latte, although I will say this is 2021 Bath & Body Works. This is a pretty much straight up repackage of a candle that I believe has been repackaged a few times over the years, but was launched originally in 2010 or 2011, Slatkin & Co. Bath & Body Works, and it was Pumpkin Caramel Latte. Pumpkin, not really spices in it necessarily. Latte, no coffee notes, no espresso, no nothing like that. It really was a creamy, milky caramel. And then for some reason, it came out literally pretty much a straight repackaged dupe of it with the name Caramel Brûlée Latte, which is actually a more authentic name than the pumpkin, but still the latte, there's no coffee in this. Notes, creamy latte, sweet caramel, a sprinkle of nutmeg. You can see there. This is, I always say I don't like cloying. This is sugary sweet. This is like cavity sweet, but it's comforting. It is rich. The milkiness tones down the sweetness for me in a way where it's acceptable to my nose, I guess. Really like it. I burned through one of them. I got this as a backup. It's Bath & Body Works though. It's kind of straightforward. It's certainly not as complex as the HomeWorx blends here, but I do like it. It's good for layering. It's fairly straightforward, but there is not really any sort of spice to it. Caramel that you can mix into, milk, almost like, think of a hot chocolate, but instead of chocolate, caramel, like a hot caramel latte without the milk. So just a frothy caramel hot milk drink is really what I get from this, which again, the Brûlée, that works. What I think it's actually, partially this, and then add in some of this cinnamon caramel swirl. This I bought back in, this was 2013, so this is post Slatkin & Co. The notes in this one, the ultimate blend of creamy caramel, cinnamon, and sweet vanilla creates the most delectable fragrance treat. This isn't your frosting, your cinnamon frosting, anything like that. This lacks the creaminess of this and the sweetness. It's not as sweet, which is fine. It really is that kind of caramel that's right here on sort of this frosting, which to me is like the caramel on here, both literally in photo and, I doesn't say flavor, in scent. What this has that the others, the first three here, have not had is this does have that bit of spice. And they call out here sort of a cinnamon, a baking spice. And it just adds that extra oomph beyond just sugary sweetness. You've got the sugary, rich, buttery caramel. You add the creaminess of the milkiness of that candle. You add the spice of this. You bring that together in a 2022 variation of salted caramel cake with HomeWorx, an elevated quality, an elevated experience, an elevated fine home fragrance blend. And that's what you get here with a little bit, could be a little bit of marketing playing with my mind, a little bit of the cake in there, but not much. It is primarily what you're getting is the sauce, the caramel, the gooey, all put together. Really beautiful. I love it. And I said this in my first impressions haul video. I would actually name this not salted caramel cake. I would name this tres leches caramel cake or caramel tres leches cake. Almost a dulce de leche, but that sometimes has its own, I think, a certain known scent profile. So I wouldn't necessarily call it dulce de leche, but certainly tres leches, because you're getting the heavy cream and maybe even the butter that is in to the caramel, to build the caramel. You're getting the whipped cream here. It is creamy, 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 milky, milky, milky. The tres leches, well, maybe it's, dos leches in this case. I don't know if there's a third, but throw a little buttermilk or something. I think the actual recipe that Harry created did have buttermilk. You call it tres leches, that's fine. Tres leches caramel cake, because the reason why I say leche, it's very, very, very milky, very creamy. And when you're eating a tres leches cake, it's not so much the cake. The cake is the texture, and a bit of the scent, that's your vanilla bean, which is there, but you're getting more of the creaminess, and it's the creaminess in here, gang. It is so nice. Not really nutty, traditional caramel, a lot of milk, a little bit of a baking spice in there, a little bit of soft cinnamon that if someone didn't call it out, you might not know it's there, so it's not gonna knock you over, but just a beautiful, salted caramel cake, as I would call it, put my label here in my head. It is the tres leches caramel cake. So highly recommend checking this out. Let me know what you think of this. Compare it to something else. If you had it before, what are your thoughts? Would love to hear. And until next time, take care.